a terrific Tuesday tip of the week or whatever. For those of you who get that, you get it. For those of you who don't, sorry, that was years and years and years ago, about 14 years ago. So today, I'm going to talk real quickly about rebuilding. So, how do you rebuild? How do you dream big? How do you start over? What a freaking question. Not a question I thought I'd be answering, by the way. My email's going off like crazy. Not a question I thought I'd be answering, yet I'm kind of answering it in all kinds of areas of my life. And quite frankly, I was mad about it. I'm still kind of mad about it. Real quick, like fastest version ever. If you don't know, 13 years ago, I started a business called Authentic Selling. I'm Kendrick Shope, the creator of that business. And in the last year, I was hacked. All of my money was stolen. I had neurosurgery, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to focus on that. So I am definitely rebuilding and rebuilding in a lot of areas. I've talked a lot and been really brutally honest about the mindset and the emotional part of coming back to work and all that that entailed, and getting inspiration from the most unlikely places ever. But today, at some point, you've got to do more than just talk about emotional and talk about the mindset stuff. At some point, you got to make a decision and you got to go. You're either going to do this or you're not. And by choosing not, you're still making a decision, right? That's the thing I think that is not rocket science. We've all heard that before, but by doing nothing, you're choosing nothing. You're choosing to accept what is. So, planning, rebuilding. Where do you start? I will tell you, I have been so overwhelmed, so freaked the flip out by this, among many other things in my life. I was so freaked out by this. And so, one of the things I learned, God, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, was when you're freaked the flip out, is break that thing that seems so huge down into smaller parts, break it down into bite-sized steps. And y'all, I write plans for businesses all day long, every day, on how they can hit their quotas, make more money, close more sales. But this freaked me out. I was stuck in quicksand. But through the help of some friends, I finally got this broken down enough to be able to say, okay, this is where we're gonna start. This is how we're gonna rebuild. Now, in actuality, it's not that different from making plans for my business before all the drama happened, before everything went sideways. You know, we used to have planning meetings where I would go and I'd say, we're going to walk through these steps. And when we leave here, we're going to know a few things. We're going to know what our quota is. We're going to know how we're going to hit that quota. We're going to know what to do if we don't hit that quota. I just didn't anticipate losing everything. And I didn't lose everything, but business wise. So if you're overwhelmed and if you're looking at rebuilding, and why would you rebuild? Let's just be really clear on that. It doesn't have to be something like dramatic that like what happened to me. It doesn't have to be, let's just say this, actually. There are all kinds of reasons to rebuild. Personal reasons like death of a loved one, divorce. Great. Those are the two I can think of. Moving to a different city. Your kid driving for the first time, which has happened to you. Like they're all, your priorities change, a sick parent, whatever. There are all kinds of reasons that your priorities shift. At work, there are all kinds of reasons that things shift as well. And so things are going to go sideways. There are some constants in life, right? What's the saying? Death and taxes. Well, there are some other constants too, and that is things are going to go sideways. Things are going to go upside down. And so being able to pull yourself up and keep going without killing yourself. I used to say all the time, my dad says all the time, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it would make me so mad because I would say, what if my bootstraps break? Then I got nothing. And he would say, keep going. Well, okay, that's not good enough for me. There are times when you just can't. So how do you rebuild from, from a business point of view? The first thing you want to do as you're planning and you're dreaming about 2025 is know where you're headed. Know where you're headed. And that starts with, even though this is not the most important thing, that starts with money. How much do you need to make? What are your expenses? The two most unsexy questions, the two least hot questions you can answer. What are your expenses? Maybe that's not two, that's one. But that's gag. I don't want to know my expenses. I'm sorry, I'm really not good with numbers. Ugh. I don't want to know my expenses, but you need to know. How much do you need to make to be profitable? And a good friend of mine and former client, Chris Belfi, said to me, and do you want to be $5 profitable or do you want to be $5 million profitable? Okay, well, I'll take 5 million. Thank you very much. And so you got to be tough enough to do this work. Said with love, you got to be tough enough to look at the numbers even when you don't want to. I call that in sales, I don't, but I refer to that as your quota. What's your quota? And you need to know. I just got off of a strategy session with a client where we were talking about this. I said, what's your revenue goal? What's your goal to sell before taxes, before expenses? And then how do we get there? Right? What's the mix of all the things we can put together to hit that goal? Numbers don't lie. They just are. And so we got to be really clear with those. So knowing your quota, knowing what your expenses are, the unsexy, the non-fun stuff, start there. Write that sucker down, write that quota down. A professor at Virginia Tech, which y'all have probably heard this, regularly has people write their goals down. And he says that people who write their goals down earn 9 times as much over their lifetimes as people who don't. Think about that. You can make 9 times more money over your lifetime by writing down your goal. But 80% of Americans, according to this professor at Virginia Tech, don't even have goals. 16% have goals, but they don't write them down. Less than 4% of Americans actually write their goals down. Guess which ones make the most money year after year? That's the easiest thing in the world. I've known that statistic for over a decade. I don't know the last time I wrote my goals down. I don't know the last time that I did know our financial goals, but I don't know the last time that I wrote my goals down. Do that. Write down what the frick you want. I mean, if you are 9 times, or if you're going to, let's see, earn 9 times more money, if you write it down over your lifetime, why would you not? If 4% of Americans actually write their goals down, and those are the ones that make the most money, that hit their goals, that get what they want the most, that's the easiest thing in the world to do. So step 1 of this rebuilding and dreaming big. Now, this is after, I probably shouldn't call it step 1, but this is after you forgive yourself. This is after you deal with whatever's going on, right? Because there's bound to be some guilt. Good grief, has there been guilt on my part for all the things that went sideways, even the things I can't control, because that's who I am. I feel guilty about everything. I'm working on it. I'm working on a lot. That's on my goals. So after you've worked through that mindset stuff and you are mentally strong enough to say, how do I get where I want to go? How do I bridge this gap of things aren't necessarily where they need to be, where they were before? What do I do? Then ask yourself, okay, what do I actually need, right? How much money do I need and what are my expenses? That's step 1. Step 2 is set the stage. So if number 1 is know your quota, know where you're headed, know your expenses, step 2 is set the stage. And I've already talked about this a little bit. That's how do you get there? How do you get there? What props do you need? What do you not need? What avenues are you going to use to connect with your audience? What are you offering? What does the mix of all your offers look like? Set the freaking stage. What's that look like? And then number 3, what are your non-negotiables? And that is something that you need to look at as far as your home is concerned, as well as or your personal life. What are your non-negotiables? You know, I say all the time, Halliann is the most important thing in my world. I don't do anything without thinking about her. So what are your non-negotiables? And what are your non-negotiables as far as the most important thing in your world is concerned, right? Like, you've got to be able to be the person that person needs you to be too, which there's a post about that from earlier today. Time's ticking. What do you need to let go of? So those are your first 3 steps. How do you rebuild and dream big after Everything went sideways, or you feel like everything went sideways? Number one, what's your quota? Know your revenue goal, know how much money you need to make. Number two, know your expenses. Next thing is set the stage. How are you going to get there? How are you going to mix all your products and your services and your whatever to hit that number? And then write it down. Write it down. Be one of the 4% who writes down their income goal. Write it down. And then number three, what are your non-negotiables? And with non-negotiables, I'm going to encourage you to ask some hard questions. I'm going to encourage you to ask, what are you letting go of? What are you not settling for anymore? So I'll give you an example. At work, lots of you all call me the most over delivering woman online, which I love. My ego's tied up in that. I'm not gonna lie. It's fun to be called the most over delivering woman online. However, and a lot of you have seen this got to a point where I was giving so much, I was about to crash. I think I did crash. I was in, the ER with migraines. I was in, everything was just sideways. I like that word. And so, as much as I want to continue to be the most over delivering woman online, as much as I want to continue to be a kick ass mom, there's some things I've got to change because there's not enough hours in the day to do everything I want to do. There's not enough time. And so, what are your non negotiables? That's an important question. What do you got to let go of? Even if you want to do it, what do you got to let go of? What do you have to change? Step number one, know your quota, know your expenses. Step number two, set the stage. How are you going to get there? How are you going to make it happen? What's the mix look like? Write it down. Write it down. And write down your goals for your life too. I mean, your goals don't just have to be about money, right? I mean, most of the people I know, as much as I love to make money and I love to take trips and I love to go to New York and see Broadway and I love to think about all the things that I'm going to do in this next version of my business and life, it's not all about money. So write down the other things you want. Write down those things that light you up. And then what are the non-negotiables in business, with your employees, with your customers, with your kids, with your spouse, and with your life? One of the best pieces of advice I can give you, haven't always followed it. So I'll confess, this is a little bit of do as I say, not as I do. I hate that saying, by the way. I had a coach in high school and a teacher. He wasn't my coach, but a coach in high school used to say that to us all the time. He's one of my really close friends' dads. Do as I say, not as I do. And it drove me bananas. But anyway, I'm going to say it to you. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm working on this. I'm working on this as well. But, one of the best things that I can encourage you to ask yourself as you're starting to rebuild, as you're starting to plan for 2025, as you're looking towards the future. And I think I said this earlier. This was a pill that was really hard for me to swallow. I had to choke it down. But it's true. It's true. And that question is, if something needs to change, I'm going to say it differently than I said it earlier. If something needs to change, sorry, lost my train of thought. Uh, if something needs to change and you take no action, or you toy with taking action, you're choosing that thing that needs to change. That's not rocket science, right? That's not the question. So, what are you choosing that is not good for your business? What are you choosing that may not be good for your life or even for your kid? And sometimes those choices they sting, man. They sting bad. But as you're settling on non-negotiables, I can tell you there are things that I have done in the past 2 decades of my life I will never do again. This whole identity theft thing and neurosurgery and all of that's made that crystal clear. And I don't like all of them. I mean, I don't want to exercise. I don't want to have to wash my hair every day, but I'm going to. Ugh, hate it because it's a non-negotiable. Health is a non-negotiable. Doesn't mean they're always fun. Doesn't mean that you're excited to do them. Doesn't mean they don't hurt. But what it does mean is the end result is worth it. So start planning. Know your quota. What are your expenses? Set the stage. How are you going to get there? How are you going to make it happen? If that's too big of a question, break it down. And then write down your goals in your personal life, in your business life. Yes, your financial goals, but beyond money. And then what are your non negotiables in your life, in your business, with your health, with your weight, with your kids, with all of it, with your friendships, with your customers? The past, I don't know, half year or so, probably not even that long, I finally believe again I can do this. I lost that thing that is so special to me, that whole belief thing, that if you know me or if you've heard me speak before, you know is so freaking important to me. One of the things I say all the time is don't downgrade your dreams to match your reality. Upgrade your beliefs to match your dreams. And I downgraded so much. And so I can tell you, for me to be able to sit here a couple of days before Thanksgiving in the US and say, I know I can do this again. I know I can create this again. And I know that there's a need for it. You can too. I promise you, you can too. You know why? Because the world needs what you got to offer. There are people out there looking for what you're selling right now. Be their answer, be their dream come true. And remember, I believe in you. I believe in your business.